Yes, the good old calendar debate. Without a doubt, one of the most divisive and contentious topics we see being heavily debated in the body of Messiah today. Well, aside from the correct pronunciation of the Father and Son's name, the Messiah's true identity, believers keeping the Torah, and what moon phase is a true new moon. Sadly, knowledge has a way of producing rotten fruit, the type of prideful and puffed up behavior that creates stumbling blocks for both our brothers and sisters in Messiah and to the lost who see this contentious and divisive behavior constantly taking place in the assembly. Do not be deceived. We will give an account for every word we speak and type. Don't let the Master YAHUAH return to find you beating your fellow servants. Let us always remember the second greatest commandment, for there is nothing more important than loving and encouraging one another in these last days. Think about it. Instead of humility, we have pride. Instead of unity, we have division. Instead of understanding, we have discord. And instead of order, we have confusion. All attributes of the evil one. Remember, our Messiah said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." That's Mark chapter 3, verse 25. My brothers and sisters, were we called out of darkness in these last days to win arguments about the Sabbath and the calendar? Or were we called out to walk with each other in the Father's instructions, be a light to the nations, and preach the gospel of the kingdom? Let us examine ourselves daily and never lose sight of what walking in Torah is truly about. And let us never be like the Pharisees that our Master YAHUAH rightly rebuked. Let us continue fighting the good fight of faith, and not one another. Regardless if we disagree on this topic, I want you to know that I love you and I support your search for the truth. We are all constantly learning, and ultimately we must study to show ourselves approved and be convinced in our own minds. Simply put, if you are in Messiah, then you are my brother or sister. The Messiah will come and sort out any of our misunderstandings. So let us do our best to never steal the judgment seat of our Master and start casting our brothers and sisters into the lake of fire over a difference in doctrine. Remember, we will be judged by the measure in which we judge, and I believe our differences are a huge fruit test. Okay, now let's begin. This ministry believes and teaches that the celestial clocking calendar of YAHUAH is based on a Luni-Solar-Astro Calendar, utilizing all three great witnesses in the heavens, the sun, moon, and stars, to guide us to his set-apart feasts, Sabbaths, and new moon days. We confidently follow and teach this celestial clocking calendar based on the Scriptural, etymological, photographic, and astronomical evidence that YAHUAH, our Father of Lights, has given us to number our days. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. That was Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 to 18. He made the moon also to serve in her seasons for a declaration of times, and a sign of the world. From the moon is the sign of feasts, a light that decreases in her perfection. The month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of the heavens. That was Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus chapter 43, verse 6 to 8. He made the moon for appointed times. The sun knows it's going down. That's Psalm 104, verse 19. As we clearly just established from Scripture, the Most High created a celestial clocking calendar based on the sun, moon, and stars, completely removed from the calendars of man. And as we see on the very first page of Scripture, these three great lights were to be used for signs and seasons, or appointed times. and for days and years. If we define our terms like good Bereans, we find the word used here for seasons is the Hebrew word moed, Strong's H4150. So now that we have clearly demonstrated that Scripture instructs us to use the sun, moon, and stars to calculate the moedim, or appointed times, what does this have to do with the weekly Sabbath? Then YAHUAH said to Moses, "Speak unto the children of Yasharal, or Israel, and say unto them, concerning the feasts of YAHUAH, which ye shall proclaim to be set apart convocations, even these are my feasts." That's Leviticus 23 verse 1-2. The same Hebrew word we saw used for seasons in Genesis, moed, is also used here in Leviticus 23 as feasts. And as we demonstrated on the first page of Scripture, we are to use the Father's celestial clocking calendar to calculate his moed, or moedim, not the calendars of man named after their false mighty ones. So what was the first Luni-Solar-Astro based feast, or moed, the Most High instructed us to keep? For 6 days work may be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of complete rest, a day of sacred assembly. You must not do any work wherever you live. It is a Sabbath to YAHUAH. That's Leviticus 23 verse 3. But wait, if Leviticus just instructed us to rest every seventh day, then why do we celebrate the Sabbath on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th? To be fair, we also fell into this common misunderstanding before the Most High brought our hearts to wisdom and taught us how to number our days with his celestial clocking calendar, not the calendars of man. This is what the sovereign YAHUAH says. The gate of the inner court facing east is to be shut on the 6 working days, but on the Sabbath day and on the day of the new moon it is to be opened. That's Ezekiel chapter 46 verse 1. Did you catch it? When we use Scripture in context, we clearly see that new moon days are not counted as one of the 6 working days, and neither is it the 7th-day Sabbath. Here in the book of Ezekiel, we find the Most High actually ordained 3 kinds of days each month, which are named and have specific function. The east gate of the temple being opened or closed for worship actually defines that these days can never overlap. New moon days and Sabbaths are both identified as worship days in contrast to work days. Each day is either a work day or a worship day, and they can never be both. The book of Genesis correctly reveals that 2 kinds of days make up a scriptural week, work days and Sabbaths. However, Ezekiel, Leviticus, and Isaiah all identify that 3 kinds of days make up the scriptural month. Remember, the east gate is open for worship on both new moon days and Sabbaths, but the east gate is shut on work days, signaling that these are not worship days. Clearly, Sabbath days and work days never overlap, and likewise, new moon days and work days never overlap. Simply put, new moon days can never be 7th-day Sabbaths because they are always the first day of the month, and they are not part of the weekly cycle, or the 7th day. However, by its very existence, the new moon day breaks the cycle of work days and Sabbath days each lunar month of 29 or 30 days. Therefore, it is impossible for the Creator's weeks to have cycled without end since creation, for the mere fact that there are 3 kinds of days each month, and not just 2, as many in the world believe today. Cycling weeks cannot remain unbroken for 6,000 years, 6 months, or even 6 weeks, for the very reason that the new moon day exists as a 3rd kind of day. Based on Scripture alone, the first day of every scriptural month is New Moon Day. 7 days later, on the 8th day, is the first 7th-day Sabbath of the month. Try saying that 5 times fast. 7 days later, on the 15th day, is the second 7th-day Sabbath of the month. 7 days after that, on the 22nd day, is the third seventh-day Sabbath of the month. And finally, 7 days later, on the 29th day, is the fourth and final seventh-day Sabbath of the month. Once again, this makes a continuous 7-day weekly cycle since creation simply impossible. Now, for the sake of time and modern attention spans, I'm going to end this video here as part 1. What I pray you take from this video is that the Most High YAHUAH, our Father of Lights, gave us 3 great witnesses in the heavens to teach us to number our days, and not the calendars of man that are entirely severed from the Father's perfect timepiece based on the sun, moon, and stars. As a pastor, I must stand on the truth of Scripture and context. Many years ago, I actually fought against this doctrine, but no amount of cognitive dissonance or the common arguments used against it today will change this biblical truth. Thank you for watching. I pray this video has been a blessing. Watch out for part 2 of this series. The Most High willing, we post new content every single week. Hit that like button and subscribe for more scripture and context. Shalom.